Hi, orchestra. Hope everyone's doing well. This week, we're going to start working on our module with intervals. Now, intervals play a crucial role in how we develop things, both with harmony and with melody. We use different sizes of intervals next to each other to make different types of scales. That's how we come up with our major, minor, all three versions of our minor scales, and other scales that we haven't even explored yet. So it's going to be a lot of information in this. There's going to be a lot of symbols and numbers that might look a little strange. We're going to take it nice and easy, and we're only going to worry about scale degrees and intervals that are involved in a major scale. So if you have any questions, make sure you tune into our Google Meets that are going to happen once a week from now on during your scheduled times on that schedule I sent out. And if you have any other questions, just send me an email, and I'm more than happy to help. All right, let's get started. All right, so here's our introduction to intervals. Musicians use intervals to measure the distance between two notes. Intervals can range from very small to very large, much like other units of measurement, such as millimeters, centimeters, meters, and etc. Notice that here in the example, they get increasingly larger. So millimeters is our smallest one, centimeters is a little bit bigger, meters even bigger, etc. Now, here are all the intervals that happen between the beginning of a scale and the end of a scale. There are 12 of them altogether. As you can see, there are a lot of intervals, but don't worry, we won't look at all of them right now. Let's just focus on these 8. And these 8 intervals that we're going to be looking at are the most common ones and the ones that we will see in a major scale. So all of these are part of a major scale. Intervals are measured by the number of half steps that are in between two notes. The farther apart the notes are, the bigger the interval. To measure an interval, we always begin our measuring with the lowest note that is seen or heard, and we're going to call that note number 1. We then measure up to the next note. Every line and space going up and down the staff is a step. I'll show you what I mean. So we've seen these scale degrees before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1. But I want you guys to think about each line and space going up as also a step. So let's just say this note is going to be number 1, the beginning of our scale. Number 1, if you were to go up one space, this is 2. Up a line is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. And that's how we get our intervals. So the space between the two. So let's just say, for example, this one wasn't 7. Let's say this was number 1. This would be 1, and this would be 2. So as it goes up, we go up the numbers. We'll use the C major scale for these examples. So the note C will always be note number 1, and we'll use everything from there. Our first example that we have is the perfect unison, meaning 2 C's in a row, 2 of the exact same note. So we say the distance between the note C and the same note C is, well, nothing. They're the exact same. Since we didn't go anywhere between the notes, we just call this unison, or the same. So our symbol for that is P1. Okay? Perfect unison, 1. We didn't go anywhere. This is note number 1. The distance from the note C to the high C at the top of the scale is an octave, or we also call this an eighth, or a perfect eighth. Since there are 6 other notes, D, E, F, G, A, and B, before you start back at 1. 8 notes is an octave, just like octopus has 8 legs, octagon has 8 sides, and octave has 8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's where we get our octave. Here we have a major second. The distance from C to D is 2 half steps. We call this interval a major second. So the other way to think of it that we talked about is this is note number 1. We go up to the next space, 1, 2. A song that starts with a major second is the birthday song. The first 3 notes of the song is a major second. I would suggest taking out your instrument and playing these first 2 notes, or even start on like a note D and play 2 Ds and an E. And I think you'll kind of see how we could start the song. The question I want you to think about is, what might be the name of the interval from C to C sharp? It's still a second, but we don't call it a major second. You can look back at the list of intervals at the beginning of the slideshow to kind of help you out with what that might look like. This is a major third. The distance from C to E is 4 half steps. We could also say it's 2 whole steps. And we call this interval a major third. So here's note number 1, 1, up a space is 2, up another line, 3. 1, 2, 3. So here we have a third, and this is going to be our major third since we're in C major. Question for you is, what would be a major third in D major? D, E, and then what? What would come next? What would be the third note of that scale? What would be the major third in D major? Here's a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. Now, we call these perfect intervals for a reason. C to F and C to G are called perfect intervals. They do not sound major or minor when you hear them. They just sound, well, perfect. Perfect fourths and perfect fifths appear in all of our major and minor scales. So other notes around them may change to make the scale sound different, but we always have perfect fourths and perfect fifths. They don't really sound like anything. They just kind of have a really nice, kind of pleasant, we say a consonant sound, like consonants like when you speak, like vowels. So we say there's a consonant sound to them, meaning they just go well together. The distance from C to F, 5 half steps. So as you can see, we're getting further and further away from our note C. So C, D, E, and F, and all the notes in between. And an example for a perfect fourth would be Here Comes the Bride. Bum, bum, ba-dum. Perfect fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the half steps in between, like C sharp, D sharp, F sharp. And the first 2 notes from Star Wars theme are also a perfect fifth. Another example would be Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the first 2 notes. We use fourths and fifths when we tune our instruments, especially as we get more and more advanced into high school. Violins, violas, and cellos are tuned with their strings a perfect fifth apart from each other, going left to right. So you see here on the violins, G to D is a perfect fifth apart, D to A is a perfect fifth apart, and A to E is a perfect fifth apart. So that's how we know what they are supposed to sound like. You'll see professional orchestras tune like this. For cellos and violas, C to G to D, and D to A. Now bass strings are tuned a perfect fourth apart, going left to right. So here's E to A, that's a fourth, A to D is a fourth, and D to G is a fourth. Our last 2 intervals that we're going to look at are the major sixth and the major seventh. A major sixth is 9 half steps from one note to another. So again, we're getting further and further. C all the way up to A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. A major seventh is 11 half steps between notes. But we could also say it's 7 steps on the staff to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we go from a C in treble clef to a B in treble clef. This is as far apart as you can have 2 notes, in Western music that is, before you reach an octave. So if you go up one more space, you go from one C to the next, and we're back to an octave. And that's as far apart as we can get. Now, in Eastern music and a lot of music from other parts of the world, they have what they call microtones, which means there are notes in between even the half steps. So if you take maybe like a C and a C sharp, which are a half step apart, they would have notes that live in between those 2 notes as well. It's really, really cool music. It's really, really, people would call it very exotic sounding. It's not something that we are traditionally used to with our ears over here in the US, but it's really, really cool music, and I encourage you guys to check it out.